two. Then there's Leroy and Stitch. There's Zach. There he is. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, well, guys, just introducing Zach real quick. Zach Correa is our go-to preferred architect because of the different ideas behind his designs, and so wanted to invite him here so you guys can get more of the mindset behind his architecture, behind everything that he does, and get a little bit more of his backstory. So with that being the case, I'm going to bow out. Thank you so much, JD, for inviting me on.
Jay, is it fair to say if Michelangelo were alive, he'd probably be taking notes from Zach?
Theoretically, yes.
I feel like it's a fair assessment. Thank you for chiming in, brother.
All right, bye.
Zach, you made it, dude.
Yeah, just last minute, it popped up, and so yeah, but for some reason it wasn't popping up on the screen before. So
you made it here now, man. Looking good, feeling good, brother.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for hosting this. I'm excited to get started.
Oh man, my pleasure. Yeah, well, like we talked about the other day, man, I'm just absolutely intrigued by what you do, and I think everybody here can probably back me up in that, hence why people are watching this. But I mean, this is going to be replayed. This is going to be on our mighty network, so people can watch this, forever and ever. So I'm just excited to have you on, man. And I think just the kickoff question is like, tell us a little bit about Zach. How did you get into architecture and site planning, and ultimately, how'd you get connected with ATS, man?
Yeah, that's so basically I've always been creative. I've always loved designing things, building things, bringing things into this world. I was originally a musician all throughout middle school, high school, and then into college. My first major was actually jazz studies, performance major, but then I ended up realizing that's not really much of a career for most people. Some people it can be, and though I was very serious about it, I decided to try something a little different. My dad had always told me that I would make a good architect ever since I was a little kid, and like in true kid fashion, I completely ignored that and ran in the opposite direction, at least until college, until my first year of college. After that, I started realizing that I might want a family and, like not have to travel, 300 days a year. Although now I'm finding myself constantly traveling anyway, but I'm bringing my family with me, so it's kind of nice. But I decided to try architecture, realized that it kind of perfectly captured everything that, like all of my skills and my values, and started studying that. I went to grad school at the University of South Florida, studied architecture there, and got my master's in architecture and community design. And my first day of school in architecture, in the architecture program, I felt like I had a moment with God, where I felt like he was like speaking into my life. Like it was the first day, first class, I was sitting down, and the professor was out there lecturing, and I just felt like God said, Zach, you'll be developing small sustainable communities. And I was like, what is it? And I look around like as though some other people have like heard this thing, and everyone's there like drooling and just like ignoring the professor and like whatever. And I'm over here like, what's going on? This is crazy. And in my mind, I remember thinking, like, I don't even know what that means. What do you mean small sustainable communities? And so I was like, if you just want me to design mud huts in like third world countries, then I'm happy to do that, but I should probably quit the architecture program because this is not for that. So this is like, I don't need a degree, and all this education to do that. And I felt like he was just reassuring me, like, you're exactly where you need to be. Just stick this out, see it through. You'll understand more, as you walk this out. And I was like, okay. In my when I was doing my thesis, I felt very strongly about doing it on innovative design process. everyone else pretty much chooses to pick a building typology to do their thesis on. So for example, it might be one person might choose hospitals, and they study hospitals, and they get really good at that. They do their whole thesis on that, or skyscrapers, or the residents, or whatever it might be. They choose a building typology and then they focus on that. I felt like that was a little too narrow. I didn't want to pick up a building typology, so I instead wanted something more fundamental, and so I chose design process. And what I did was I studied a bunch of geniuses like Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo, like the people that you talk about. I actually studied these people, and I didn't really care about what it was that they did that revolutionized, the world. What I wanted to know was I wanted to study the design process that led to the genius conclusion. And I did this for a lot of dozens and dozens of people that like changed the world. And I saw a pattern emerge where I was like, wow, there is a very specific design process. It looks, like it's the same pattern being repeated over and over and over again. And so I started documenting this pattern. And one of my professors had told me that they're like, hey, you should apply this to your thesis. And I was like, oh, that's a good idea. Let me apply it. And so one of the things that I did to apply it was one of the principles is that you should study two categorically unrelated topics at the same time, and then draw conclusions between the two. I won't get into the details as to why, but it's just very important. So like if I was studying surgery, then I might study baking, at the same time, and then start to draw conclusions like, what can baking teach me about performing surgery? Which seems ridiculous, but that's kind of the point, because genius conclusions are not so much about aptitude, it's about a shift in perspective. And so you gain that shift in perspective by going into completely different fields. And so the one that I thought to go into was like biology, plants. I studied plants, and that ended up going into researching a lot about ecosystems, and that led to like permaculture, and I started, figuring that stuff out. As I was learning about that, it emerged again. I was like, okay, what can I learn about design process from plants? And I realized that this almost the simplest form, which is like the metabolic structure of biological life, how it grows and forms over time. It's just like it perfectly mimics that design process. And so then I had like this, I felt like I was just like hit over the head with this thing. And I was like, whoa, it's almost like there's a creator, and he created everything, and he has a special way that he likes to design things. And maybe if we end up using that design process and applying it to whatever it is that we're trying to do, I apply this thing I apply it to everything. It's like the foundation of how I see the world now. Then we'll come to genius conclusions, or conclusions that tend to be brilliant or impactful in some way. And so that was really the foundation of my architectural career, of a lot. It led to the next thing that came up was like, okay, well, maybe you should apply this design theory to a project of some kind and see where that leads. And so I did, and I decided to apply to sustainable communities, because I was like, oh, that's a problem that God's putting on my plate to help be a part of solving. And so then that ended up, long story short, I won't get into that because this is not a Lemongraft discussion, but like basically that's where Lemongraft formed, which is a tech company that I ended up starting while I was in my thesis. It blossomed into this company and started growing from there. Went on a little bit of a whirlwind with that one. Met a lot of really influential people, and got a lot of really great advice, and that was a cool journey also. But it was just cool to see how utilizing that principle, that design process, led to such a radical change. And then from Lemongraft, which was my first big company, from Lemongraft, that led me to meet Axe. And so we ended up talking because we're kind of in the same space, and we're like, oh my gosh, acts as like this amazing community, and they're doing this development stuff, and then it was like, oh, lemongrass could be an interesting part of this. Um, uh, and so we ended up meeting TJ, Correa, and I here in Tennessee as they were coming through, and while we were talking, they had realized that I was like, I guess it came out that I was like an architect, and they're like, wait a second, you're an architect? I was like, yeah. They're like, okay, well, let's table the lemongrass discussion. That's like a future need. It's like, you know what the immediate need right now is? We need architecture. And so like, so let's have that discussion. So completely the conversation shifted to architecture, and then that's kind of where that relationship blossomed. And so now I'm really happy to be much more involved in helping these communities build up and grow. And I'm kind of putting a little twist on it, still applying my thesis to every project that I work on, and learning a little bit every step I take. It's like I see a little bit more of that pathway ahead, and so that's kind of what brought me here.
This is amazing. I'm so inspired. Like from our talk the other day, I had a glimmer of some of this stuff, but I think takeaways that are going off in my head are, one, and this is applicable to probably all of us. One is that if God gives us a vision, he'll also give us the provision. So you're sitting in the classroom and he downloads a vision for you, and look how everything else is played out. So why can't that be the same for everybody here in the chat and beyond, where you have a vision of a homestead, of family estate, and an idea of community? Well, if that's your vision, then why is it so far out of reach to believe that God won't provide a provision for you as well, is one. And the second one, I was talking to a friend of mine last night, and we were talking about around the Bible verse, Matthew 6:33, about seeking first the kingdom. Another way of saying that is like, understand the kingdom and all these other things will be added unto you. And that's what you did, bro. Like, you figured out the way which things work, and you're applying it here on earth.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Did it freeze?
So just to read, no, you're good. Go.
Sorry. I think it was just freezing a little bit for me, but I heard what you said. Yeah, I had a friend actually reach out to me, and this has been a very recent lesson.
Still there?
Oh, are we good? Here, give me one second. I think let me.
Working out Wi-Fi.
Are you able to hear me? Yeah, we might have too many devices. I'm texting. Give me 1 second. Let me just ask them to take a few devices off the Wi-Fi real quick. Sorry, we might be. It's kind of stormy. It's kind of stormy outside, so that might be it.
All right, I see it. Don't put the tin foil on the antennas. That's old school. Speaking of 90s, who remembers tin foil on the antennas back in the day? Come on now. I know we got some other 80s and 90s babies in this place. Oh, I was freezing. I'm sorry if my face looked funny, Glenn. You're aging yourself, JD. Yeah, that's true. Rabbit ears, right on. He's back.
Yeah. So, is it coming through okay?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, I guess it's been a recent.
Well, it was.
Yeah, it's good. Okay. Sorry about that. It is a little stormy over here right now. So, there was a recent lesson of mine that I've come to realize, which is like, you need to start with the mission. And then once you understand like what mission, God is tasking you with, if you stay true to that and have faith and step out in faith, he'll like make it all happen. And I really believe that I know he's blessed me tremendously on this mission. I've heard people say before that if you just have faith, then that'll just make stuff happen, and I think it's who am I to say one way or the other, but in my experience, I've realized that there's something really potent about first having a mission, you know, like if you first have a mission, then faith becomes like a weapon. I mean, it is like supercharged, you know, like, because I can believe for anything now. Like I literally, I do this like as like a daily thing for myself, you know. I'll just sit and I'll pray and be like, you know what, I want this to happen. I was like, yeah, God, let's do this, you know. And once again, it's not just out of nowhere. It's not just because. It's like, what's the mission? Okay, we're going to go here. We're going to do this thing. Okay, great. Now, what do I need to believe in for that to happen? Okay, I'm going to believe in this. Like, let's just make this happen. And I'll pray to him about it. I'm like, hey, I think this is the direction we need. And it's like, I don't know how to explain it other than it's like he just paves the way. He's just like, okay, Zach, we're good. This is how you want to execute on it. Let's do it. But like I don't know, he like invites. My experience was it was like an invitation, not so much a command, but like an invitation. Like, hey, here's a mission I have on this earth. Do you want to be a part of it? I was like, yeah, I do want to be a part of it. So okay, great. And then he sort of put me in the driver's seat for my whole part of it, you know. And it's like, okay, now you're in charge. Like, what do you need, you know? And then he's like the support, you know. He's like, what do you need? Tell me. Like, let's go, let's do this. I'm like, okay, well, I think this, I think that. Like, okay, let's. And I'm moving, I'm trying things, and of course I get a lot of guidance as well. But like I do feel like I know that some people have more of a led relationship with him, where it was like, God, you tell me exactly what I need to do every step. Like, tell me where I need to put my left foot, tell me where I need to put my right foot. My personal relationship through this process has been a little bit different, where I feel like he's been more like partnering, you know, and saying like, Zach, I want you to have a voice in this, and I want to see what you do with this, and then I will support that and help open up the doors and make it happen. Which to me, that feels very relational, which is, I know, in my opinion, is like one of the main reasons why we have free will, you know, is to like have that kind of relationship. And when I think of myself as a father and the kind of relationship I want with my son, and I don't really want him asking me where to put his left foot and his right foot, and how to put his underwear on, and how to take a breath, you know, like to some point, like I want him to start leading, and him to kind of like look back and be like, is this okay? I think I want to go this way. And I was like, it's good, you know, or I'll guide him in some way. I'll be like, no, don't do that. Like, that's like, okay. Like, let's slow down, you know, Gabriel, let's, you know. And so it's like a back and forth, but like when I think about myself as a father to Gabriel, it's very similar, at least. And maybe God's, you know, doing this uniquely with me, or people like me, you know, maybe I'm sure he, you know, relates to people differently in the way that they need. But for me, that's been my experience. But yeah, having that mission, I think, is like the starting point. At least that's what I've come to realize.
That's so good, man. Thanks for sharing that, dude. That's huge. When it comes to what you do with ACTS, what you do as an architect specifically, people probably want to know, like, okay, Zach, the lead architect for ACTS, what does that mean? How do you do what you do? What does that entail? Go for it.
Yeah, there's a few layers to it. So the first layer is, so the first layer is like, ACTS is really trying to revolutionize community development, like, and they're doing it. It's pretty amazing. I mean, it's really something when someone comes to me and they're like, hey, Zach, you know, I'm thinking about this, and I want to, you know, like, get some land, and then, you know, raise some animals. I want some freedom. I want to, you know, to raise my kids differently than this other way that we've been doing it. And, you know, but I don't know how to, I mean, you guys know the story. It's literally your story. Everyone who's listening here, it's like, it's your story, right? And I hear the story like so much, you know, and it's even outside of the ACTS community, like everywhere, right? And it's fascinating, you know, when the question comes up, like, do you know any existing communities that are doing this? And like the only answer is like, I'm sorry, there's only one. There's like only one right now that's actually doing that thing. Otherwise, you have to join like some small cult out in the mountains or something, or find your nearest Amish community, which I've had friends who, went to the Amish communities because that was all that there was for this sort of thing. And so this is like, I mean, I really do think it's like a godsend for people who are trying to remain somewhat in, the modern world a little bit, but trying to get back to that fundamental, like real life that people get by living on the land with their family in agriculture, all that kind of stuff. So I'm really blessed, to be able to work with X in that capacity. What that looks like, at least so far, what it's looked like, and I feel like it's always developing. We'll do like one project together, and then we'll be like, oh, this is so cool, let's do more, and then we'll do more, and it's like, okay, now we need to get even more involved, and it's like, okay. So we're just having a blast. But to start, I started by designing Little G Villa, which is it's like the model home for X, and actually they came with like this crazy mission where they're like, hey, we want to like not just revolutionize communities, but we want to revolutionize architecture for these communities. And so we started talking about what that looked like, and they're like, we want stuff we want to win awards. I think those are the exact words that TJ said. He's like, we want something that's going to win awards, and we want it in 3 weeks or whatever the date. Like, it was, the timeline was crazy. And I was crazy enough to say yes, and I'm glad I did. So started designing a model home, trying to really reimagine like what are those values. Talking to lots of people in the community, trying to figure out like what are the core values, what is the thing that we really want to do, and my wife and I, we're really wholeheartedly a part of this, this movement that's taking place in the world. And what I realized very quickly after talking to clients and going through this process, it would come up every now and then in our conversations about what they want, where like I would start talking about the house that I had planned to design for my family, and I do a lot of I study a lot about human biology and plant biology and all that kind of stuff, and so like there's a lot of things that I learn about health, and I always as an architect, it's always crosses my mind. I'm like, oh, okay, it's important to get sunlight first thing in the morning, like as like a really simple first example. It's like, okay, well, how could architecture like orient you to just get direct sunlight first thing in the morning? And does it work through windows? No. Okay, so then, and just kind of working through that step by step, and then realizing, like, analyzing the buildings that I'm in, like, does this house like do that for me? No, it doesn't. I have to biohack it, right? And I started realizing that like everyone in the health space who studies this stuff, who teaches about this stuff, their homes are just normal homes, but they end up biohacking everything. And I just didn't like what I realized is it's like a Band-Aid fix. It's like we're not just like in health where like they'll give you a drug to treat the symptom, of a problem. It's like, well, how do we solve the root issue, right? Like we want to solve the root issue, and in architecture it's the same thing. Like they're two of the most toxic things you come into contact with are food and buildings. Like your home, basically. And food, I think people are very aware of now, and we need more awareness. But food is something that's we're working on it. I think we've made a lot of progress in food. There's still a lot more to make, but like what isn't really being talked about a lot is our buildings. There's starting to be some talk about it, but the talk that's happening is coming from like a Band-Aid fix perspective. And so I'm like, well, no, we need to be talking like ground up, like fundamental, like I'm talking fundamentally, like the way we understand home should start with like our biological health, like orienting us. I always say this, like conveniently orienting us toward health. And so that's really got me on a journey, and I had a long list already of like, okay, as I was learning things, like I'd be typing things out on my notes tab on my phone or something, And so I'd have all these conversations with clients, and they would start hearing it, like some of the things that I was planning on doing for my house. And they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, that's it. That's the thing. Yes, we want that. We want that." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I just figured we were weirdos. I was like, "Okay, sure, we could start implementing. Let's start doing some healthy stuff." And eventually, I got to realize that, like, no, actually, all of my clients existing want healthy homes, and that's a message that's resonating with a lot of people. And so I started teaching about the things that I've learned, and so Axe was like, yes, we want to implement this health component. We need it to be off grid. So fundamentally, that's like a different architecture. Otherwise, you're amending things constantly. Like it's a nonstop like amendment, like hamster wheel you get yourself into, which can end up getting very expensive. And so that's taking the form of model homes with Axe. The goal is, I guess, to do a unique model home, probably 2 model homes, like the full version and then like a mini version, a full model home, and probably a cabin too. Now that I'm thinking about it, for every single Axe community, because the climate's different depending on where you're located. Geography is different. Everything's different, and so like that commands a different architecture in order for us to have the same sort of solution for people. And so that's kind of that. And then I also just work with landowners. Obviously, landowners can choose whatever architect they want. It's not like this is a package deal. But for those who do share the values, I do custom homes for landowners. I also have been helping people pick their parcels, because helping them to sort of analyze the sites before they buy one, analyze themselves, figure out like what is the right kind of house for them, get a kind of a blurry image of that, and then use that information to then identify which pieces of land are going to best support that kind of house that's then going to best support them and the vision that they have for their life and their health goals and all that stuff. And so then that really helps them to visualize the land, and then they'll buy the land. So it's helping them help people pick land, people who already own land, helping them locate their house on site, design their custom home, and then eventually, once I develop a larger library, I have a few projects now that we can pick from, but the goal is to eventually build out a library of projects that people can pick from if they can't or don't have a desire to like custom design something, for their particular piece of land. But then of course there'll be the model homes and then the model cabins and stuff like that I'll be pumping out for designs.
You touched on so much.
Sorry.
No, it's so good. Let me ask you this one, and let me get a yes in the chat if you want to know from Zach what the biggest mistakes people make when they're walking a property without guidance. Let me hear a yes if you want to hear what Zach has to say about that. And that's kind of, I guess it's a rhetorical, but regardless, Zach, what do you see out there, man, of like people, what are the biggest mistakes you see?
Yeah. Anytime, and it's not just land, it's like I've shopped for houses before, and anytime I go to a house, I'm always surprised by how little guidance like I get throughout that process. We never really talk about the important things. I mean, it is a financial decision, it's an important decision. And a lot of my clients in the past have been people who have bought the wrong house or bought the wrong piece of land, and then they're like, oh crap, that's help. I bought something and I can't do the thing that I wanted to do on it. Now I don't know that you'll have that issue as much with Axe, because Axe has a really robust team around it, and so the stuff that they're talking about, you being able to do that, I imagine that's a done deal, that's safe. But for people who aren't buying into Axe, it's like it's kind of the Wild West, like you don't really know. And I'll share like one horror story. A friend of mine who bought some land, 16 acres here in Tennessee, and they they just trusted the realtor. Nothing against realtors, just they just weren't aware, of this, and the due diligence wasn't performed. But they just bought like 16 acres, started doing their thing, and then they went to they needed to build an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, on the property, and so they reached out to me. They're like, "Hey Zach, can you help us with this process?" I said, "Sure." Before we started the design process, I did some due diligence to make sure that you can do. That's always the first step, is like can we even do this thing? And so I did some due diligence and realized, I was like, hey guys, like, you do not have enough road frontage to build anything. As a matter of fact, your house, legally speaking, is not legal. Like, it's your house, you can't even repair your roof because they won't give you a permit to do your roof repair. So literally your $4 million house is just going to deteriorate unless you get some sort of variance. And they were like, this is impossible. It's like, how is it that we were allowed to buy this thing and not know any of that? And so I was like, I'm going to try to figure this out, but like this is not good. And so I worked with the city and county, or the county, and had to talk to title companies and did a lot of whatevers, but we were able to make it work and got it to where their property was legal again. But it's just like, if you don't research this stuff, beforehand, but like I said, if you're buying into acts, like, I don't think that's not going to be an issue, that kind of stuff. Now what still could become an issue is really understanding like your needs and making sure that you're getting the right land that's going to serve your needs. And so like one thing that I'll start with the thing that everyone always looks for, which are like the views, and that's important, but everyone's really always looking at the views. Like, okay, if I stand here and I look out, this is a beautiful view. That's a beautiful view. And that's really great. That's an important piece. But I would say it's like one of, I don't know, 20, 30, 50 things, to think about. One thing that people very rarely think about is the sun and the angle of the sun and where it's coming from, how that affects shadows and how they're cast across the site. Like, where are you located in the world? Are you high in the northern, hemisphere? Like, are you maybe even like are you in Michigan, or are you in Costa Rica? Because the sun angle is very different, and so that just completely changes like where you would set a house on site. One thing to really think about it is like tree location. That's one that's very closely tied to sun angle. And so tree location is really important, because if you have really good shade trees, that's going to help direct the location of the house. Now, architecture can really overcome a lot of things, probably all things. I mean, there's probably nothing that architecture can't overcome. It's really just about cost. Like, how much money do you have? Because every time we have to do an amendment to the site, because the site isn't doing the thing that we need it to do, every time we do an amendment to it, it's like, okay, well, we have to now like alter it in some capacity to then make it do something. So for example, if there are no shade trees, then now I'm building architectural elements that are shading devices of some kind that are performing a lot of that task, but we have to build those, whereas maybe we don't have to do them as much if we have the proper or adequate shade trees. Another thing that people don't always think about is drainage on the site. And like the best view might be from this spot, but is it in the middle of the valley? Is it in like a low pocket that is that's where all the water is collecting? If so, that's probably not the best place to build. Another thing to consider is wind. Wind is really important, because like you want to understand the predominant wind direction, and that's different than the direction the wind is blowing while you're on site, though that is still important, because that's like real data that you're personally experiencing on that site within that microclimate, right? Because the general wind data for the region is different than the wind direction on your site. Now, wind direction can change, but if you were to go and look up some wind data, then you would start to see like, okay, here's the predominant wind directions. Now, you're going to want your home to have views. Like, like you're going to want your home to be oriented in a certain way. Like you'll have to start thinking about like, okay, what is the way I'm going to orient my house to be able to capture those predominant winds, to funnel them through the home, particularly if it's in a warm climate. How am I going to do that? Okay, if I'm orienting my home that way to capture those winds, are those winds in the summertime? Because I want to invite those in. Where are the winds coming from in the wintertime? I want to block those out. Now, if I'm blocking those out, I probably don't have all my outdoor space on that side, right? But are the best views coming from that direction? If they are, then it's like, well, how do I reconcile the best views with the sustainable, passive design of like blocking the cold winds in the winter? And then how do I reconcile that with, with the sun being on this side of the house, right? So like you have all these variables that you're kind of like juggling variables where you're like looking at a site and you're taking note of all these things. And as you're doing it, like you have to be able to start thinking through like how is that house going to roughly start massing out and taking shape, and where is the right location on site? Because the right location, you might find the right location for wind, but that might be different than the right location for sun, which might be different than the right location for the views, which might be different than the right location for drainage, which might be, and it just keeps going on. So then you try to, once you have all that, you have to like crunch it, in your mind as you're reshaping the house and then prioritizing things to where you're like, okay, this is a priority. We can amend this with architecture. We can, double up on, this one also can work, with this, with these other values here. And so really the best location that gets us the best bang for our buck with the least amount of amendments is like the house going right in this location. Or we might realize that for us and the things that we value and the things that we want, this particular site does not work for us, but it might work for someone who's a late riser, not an early morning riser, or whatever those things are. Like there's so many variables, but this is the way you should be thinking and the kinds of questions you should be asking. And I know it sounds like a lot, but it's just if you only design for a pretty picture and for like pretty views, then that's all you're going to get out of your site, out of the planning for your home. So picking the site, it could save you a lot of money because we don't have to amend a bunch of stuff. But also like a lot of it has to do with just visualizing things. So like just helping, just coming to the point where you're walking a site, you can talk through it and then just land on something and you can just sit there for a few minutes and just visualize it. That is so valuable because now you can see like what your future life might look like on that land. And that just really helps with making decisions. I mean, making informed decisions. So yeah, I'll pause there. But like, yeah.
This is amazing. I am blown away. I'm looking at the chat as well, and people are just like probably awestruck with this. I'm especially the idea of picking a parcel and designing where my house should go based on how late I sleep is. I can't let this go. I'm going to be thinking about this the rest of the week.
Well, like literally one example that I would say, like I'll just give this away. So if you're an early riser, then you should be picking a site that has a long view out to the east, right? You know what I wouldn't do if you're an early riser? I would not pick a site that is on the west side of a hill, right? Like if you have a hill and you're down in a valley on the west side, right up against that hillside, you're not going to see the morning sun until later in the day. That's going to be the first light that you get. But if you wake up at 10 o'clock, that's not a problem. That's actually preferred because you're like, I don't really want sunlight in my house at 6 a.m., and so like, these are just some questions to ask yourself, like, and different people's bodies are different, like some people they just can't help but wake up at 4 a.m. Like, I don't know, that's just how I am. Could you imagine waking up at 4 a.m. and not seeing sunlight until 10? Like, that would be crazy. I mean, like, you would literally have to hike a mountain, to get to where you could see that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the sun doesn't rise at 4:30. But it might rise at 5, or 5:30. But like for someone like you, Linda, I mean, I would not. So for you, if you're waking up at 4:30, then the question is, it's like, not only would I say pick a lot, that is on the east side if you have a hill condition, right? It depends on the conditions. I don't know, and I think you already have some land too, Linda. But like for someone who's waking up at like 4:30 in the morning, I would say, are there hills? Okay, has to be east side only. If there are no hills and it's flat, then long stretches of pasture out to the east, preferably bodies of water to the east, because the bodies of water magnify the sunlight in the morning, where you get that reflection off, right? And then also there's a whole microclimate condition with positive and negative pressure, so you get convective currents that actually double down on the prevailing winds. And if they're coming from the east, like they are in Panoplia Ranch, then you end up doubling down on that. Anyway, there's so many things you can just like you keep doubling down on. But if you have a hill condition, I would say if you wake up that early, I would say try to get up higher on the hill, because you'll see the horizon sooner than you will if you're lower on the hill, especially if there's trees that are nearby that might be blocking or shading that early sun. So getting up higher gives you a longer stretch on that horizon, so you're able to see that earlier in the day. So I would say hilltop, eastern side, 4:30 in the morning. Maybe I can't keep the sun from rising at that. I can't make the sun rise at that time, but you will be the first person in that area to see the sunrise for sure.
Yeah, and we're going to get into questions if you have some in the chat. I think maybe a good next piece before we do that is walk us through what it looks like to actually work with you, man. You gave us a lot of great details in generality, so to speak, but give it to me as far as like, let's say my wife and I want to work with you. What is the first thing? Like, walk us through that process, man, from the time that we talk on the phone, we do a Zoom. Do you take us through a parcel visit, and then you help us pick one out, and then all the way to even the home planning? Walk us through that.
Sure, yeah. I will, yeah, I'll do that. And then I think I can also share a few visuals for people as well as like some examples of like the documents that we kind of go through. Yeah, so I mean, we kind of talked about picking a parcel, right? So we right now I have kind of two offerings that I help people out with. If I happen to be on site, which I do surprise visits where I'm just like, I'm on site, or I'm like already in. I'm from Florida, so like I every now and then I'm visiting family, and when I'm down, if there's a site visit there, then I try to go and be there in person. I live in Tennessee, so the Correa open houses, I pretty much go to all of those unless I'm out of town. Because it's only an hour away. So those are, and I just love that property, going out to that site. All the sites are beautiful, but I have Tennessee has a special place in my heart. And so, yeah, so basically people can, I do like this little guided site walk with people where we do like a pre-video call before they walk the site. And we kind of learn a lot about them, figure out, like, map them out, and then start to do some reconnaissance on the parcels that might, if it's for an X community, right, we'll do for the parcels that are most likely to meet the needs or wants that they have, and like for the vision that they have for their lives. And so once we have kind of like a short list, based on studying Google Earth, you know, the maps and everything, so a little bit of data, and then of course a lot of data from them. Then they have like a short list of sites and a checklist of like things to review when they get to that site. Once they get there, I act as like tech support, and so if they have service, then you know they'll either FaceTime me or call me, text me. I share that with them like a Google Drive link. They have a checklist of like things to document, things to photograph. You know, I give them a list of questions. I'm like, okay, when you go to this site, ask these questions. Go to this part. This looks interesting. I need more data on that. You know, all that kind of stuff. And then they'll go and kind of do that. If they don't have service on site, that they still collect all the data according to the checklist and the prep work that we did in advance, but then they send that to me whenever they have service. And then afterward, we'll do like a debrief call where we will look at all the options, look at all the data that they collected on site, and then really narrow down to one, maybe two options that are just top of the list. Like those are definitely the best. Now I've even had clients where where we didn't even make it to the debrief call. Like they on the day that they were searching, they just felt so confident and so empowered that they were just like, nope, this is it, we got it. Like we did all the research. We don't even need Zach to help us figure out, like, to debrief and discover like what the best one is. Like they just knew, and they made the offer, and then they were like, we're done. And so our debrief call was more just like a celebration and a lot of confirmation, because after they showed me the data, I agreed with them 100%. I was like, yeah, you guys made a good call, that's great. And that makes me feel good to see, like when I'm working with clients and they feel empowered, like they're like, I'm just more like a guide and teaching them kind of how to do this for themselves, and then they do it, and they're like, yes, we did it. And so we do that. But the debrief call is just to help kind of finish out that decision-making process. And then after that, once you pick your parcel, then it really kind of gets started in programming and analysis phase. Programming and analysis phase is all about studying the land in depth. So we did like an overview of analysis, just enough to kind of look at the site. And I usually do those remote because it's less expensive. There's, it's just as good. I mean, I don't need to be on site all the time. And having, you or the clients, having them on site is more than enough, as long as I can help them sift through the data. But I do have people who want me to come out on site to help them pick stuff out, and I do that too. It's just more time and stuff. So once you have your site, then we start with programming and analysis phase. So we go through the whole design process for designing your custom build. Although, even if you're not doing a custom design with me, I think programming and analysis as a phase could still be a valuable phase to do for anyone, because it's really about going in depth and studying your site, like in a lot of depth, studying you in a lot of depth, getting your program and everything mapped out, studying the codes, studying zoning, studying like all this stuff that like creates the boundaries by which we then can design and create within. Because we don't want to create something that is like out of bounds and then we get our our wrist slapped because it's like, oh, you can't do that. So we want to study like what are the boundaries, and then we can then move on to the next phase, which is schematic design, where we start designing the what do you call it? You start designing the house. So for programming analysis, I'll share my screen. I'll show you a quick little document so you can see what that looks like. If you've watched some of the videos that TJ and Kara and I kind of going through this process with them, you would recognize this kind of a document. But this is the quick little sketch that I do for each client when we're going through programming analysis, where we just talk about like weather, humidity, rainfall, snowfall, daylight hours, shadow casting. Like in the summer, how long is the shadow in the winter? We do a wind rose where we aggregate some data on predominant wind directions. Where is it coming from in the summer? Where is it coming from in the winter? Latitudes for sun angles, like what's the angle of the sun in summer, winter solstice. And then I start to kind of get an idea of like how we might orient trees. If there's ideal orientations for trees, I do some sketches on that stuff. We'll do like a calculation for overhang, where we calculate out like based on the hot months and the cold months. We want to let light in on the cold months and block light out in the hot months. So what's the sun angle in degrees? What's the sun angle represented as theta here? What's the average, or what's the minimum sun angle that we want to block out? In this case, it's 59 degrees. And so what's the wall height? 11 feet. Okay, so the tangent of 11 divided by the tangent of 59 ends up giving us a 6'6" overhang, which sounds like a lot, but like that is the calculation now for the overhang that will officially block out all sunlight from hitting any external wall in the hottest months of the year when you don't want it. And so now we have an idea of that. Then in the winter, we can do another calculation to figure out how far that will penetrate, which then helps me to understand how deep a specific room can be before we start getting dark spots in that room. And should we be breaking that space up in some capacity? And then, we start going, do a site sketch. And that's when I have this little diagram here showing you where the sun's coming from at different months. This is where the sun rises in June, March, and December. This is where the sun sets in June, March, and December, and sort of the solar path. and then I'll move this thing around on site to really try to get that optimal location for the home, so that way we're optimizing for all the values that we might have for health, for passive design, for all that kind of stuff. We'll get some imagery here so that we can get like some actual eyes on like the actual site, and what that looks like. We will then do a program. It's called an adjacency diagram, where we go through the different items that you might want in your house, and then we start figuring out which ones need to be next to others, which spaces do we not want next to others, or which spaces don't matter whether or not they are next to others. And that really helps us then move into the next part of the design phase, the last part of this design phase, which is the bubble diagram. And so bubble diagrams is like a really quick and easy way to start getting a massing of the flow of spaces for your house. It's so important to start with space. Don't start with fixture. Don't start with image. Start with space, because the space can look like anything, but this is really like the soul of your home. And if you don't start with the soul, you're just going to have an empty box. We can make it look like anything. It's just like, please, 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 whenever you're designing a house, like start with the soul. You don't have to work with me. Just do this process for yourself. And I think TJ and I were talking about it, about maybe doing a workshop where I'll teach you how to do all this stuff, getting up through the bubble diagram phase. So in this case, we start with a few options for bubble diagrams based on their area, based on their adjacency diagrams, based on the site analysis and all the information and the data we're getting back. Then I start to lay out their home. And I say, okay, here's kind of the spaces that need to be next to each other. Bedroom should be to the east, homeschool room. We kind of go through all that kind of stuff. And then we start marking it up and saying, no, we don't like this. No, we don't like that. And by the end of programming analysis, we end up having a really good understanding of like the direction we need to start designing in. But that's this document really concludes the end of programming and analysis. We have other stuff like we'll do a lot of boring stuff. I have like 3 boring documents where they're all just text, where I will just write like a bunch of garbage, like which building codes are we going to be designing within? What's the zoning requirements? I don't know. What's the setbacks requirement? So whatever, we'll do that stuff as well. There's 3 of those kinds of documents where I'll analyze the survey and whatnot. But then after that is when we get into the fun stuff, and I can show you an example of schematic design. This project, we made it all the way to the end of schematic design. So that's the next design phase after programming analysis, where we start to have fun. If you've been watching Instagram, you've probably seen a quick fly through of this building. I'll do a quick little walkthrough so you can see like what does schematic design look like. This is where we start getting a real like floor plan together. We start getting real massing of the building together, and then we walk through it like a video game. So let's see if I can do this. Are you able to see this okay?
Yep, I can see it.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay, let me just get this to pop up. Sorry. You know what? Maybe we I'm gonna stop sharing. We can continue. I'm gonna try to get this to get up and running in the background, and then that way people aren't. Oh wait, I think it just worked. Here, let me share my screen again. So here's an example, and like the experience that I bring clients through for programming and analysis. So you have, what did I do this? So you have this building, and we can start to really fly through this thing. There we go. Where we're like in the space, you know, and you can really see like what it'll feel like, the scale when you have other people, like we put these people in it. You get a feel for like how the light starts to come through the space, what it looks like from different angles. This was a really fun project. I had a lot of fun with this one. What it's like to walk into a room and feel, you know, that ceiling. I also do this with some clients. We'll actually do virtual reality goggles, so you'll actually be in the space like with VR goggles on, and that takes it to a whole new level, because then there's like it's like you're actually in the space. But this is probably the best we can get without VR goggles is walking through the space. Now, in my opinion, this is really valuable. I actually don't really show clients drawings much anymore, because those are not informative and they don't really help you make good design decisions, because you're not able to visualize that as much as you can visualize this way. I mean, this gives you the parallax effect, depth perspective. Now, we don't have any materials on this yet, so this is still just masked out, but schematic design really is just about masking out the space. I maybe went a little overboard on this one with a lot of the plants and stuff, but you kind of get the picture as to like the level of detail we get to in schematic design, where you can start to understand like, okay, what is this building, you know, that we're going to. Now, this is more of a modern, like Scandinavian style building or house, but I have another client that's doing a very traditional house. If people are interested, then we can go through that one too, if they want to see what a traditional house looks like. I have a version of this in that as well, but like you can see, we have like the outdoor bathroom here. Yeah, it just gives you a way to really visualize your home before we develop it too far, and especially before you start building it. And that's really valuable because it helps you make confident decisions, and it saves you. I mean, this is the cheapest time to make design changes, is now. I mean, I literally just went through an exercise with a client where we cut out like $500,000 from the budget in like a few days. Whereas you just can't do that during construction. That's not really possible. Yeah, so that's why we do this heavy visualization early on.
I think of the quote Steve Jobs for saying that people don't know what they want until they know what they can have. And after watching what I just saw, I didn't even know I wanted all this stuff. This is insane. Can I get an amen in the chat if you guys feel like your vision was just expanded to like, holy smokes, this could happen for my property, for like where I'm going to like gather my family and friends? It's amazing. I think we can go into some Q&A if you're up for it, man. And I'll if you want to touch on this before or after, your choice as far as your arrangement with ACTS clients specifically, what it looks like to work with you on that level, and let you go from there. But if you want to answer Q&A, we can do that too, man. So your call.
Yeah, I'm happy to, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer a few questions. Although I think there were some questions that were popping up throughout. I wasn't following the feed as closely.
Yeah. I think there is someone here. Are earth ships from Arika? Are earth ships ever an option, or houses modified with earth ship features for ACTS parcels?
Regarding from like a deed restriction perspective, I can't speak to that. That's more of a TJ and Kara question. But as far as feasibility, like, can we design earth ships? Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like I said, you can do anything with architecture. Architecture is legitimately like the art of imagining something and bringing it into reality. Like I do architecture on everything. Like I had a software company and I was an architect, you know, in the software company. You know what I mean? Like you could be an architect in baking. You know, like it's just a matter of having a vision and then executing on that. That's what architecture is. So absolutely, earthships. We can do earth ships.
Nice. Sean Herring asked, what if we already own the land and home, 31 acres free and clear? We need to know how to utilize the land.
Yeah, so that would be like, we would just start with the site analysis, like the first design phase. You don't have to, like I do it per design phase. So like we could just do the first design phase, or you just kind of do the things that I talked about. Here you could try to do those on your own, of course. But if you were to get me involved, then I would recommend, if you already own land and you're trying to figure out how to optimize it, then we would get started with the programming and analysis phase, where we would analyze your site, analyze you, get your program together, do some bubble diagrams, figure out the best location for your home on your site for you, right? Like, because like it might not be the best location for me, but it might be a better location for you, depending on who's living on the site as well. That plays into it. And then at that point in time, you could still decide not to design a custom home, but at least now you understand how your site works, how you work, and what to look for when you're going out shopping for plans online or trying to pick some sort of pre-built design. I think it'll get you a lot farther than not doing an analysis like that.
Lori mentioned about the process of building her cabin as soon as they close on their Tennessee property. Do you work with the cabins as well? You help to kind of design where the cabins can go on a parcel?
Yes. Yeah. So we had just posted a video actually about one of the cabins that I designed for to be used as an axe cabin. And I do, yeah, I mean, I have, let's see, I probably can just show, I have like literally a picture of, or a little video of the cabin. Here it is. Here, I'll share my screen real quick. I mean, this is the cabin here. Sorry, there we go. So it's a really tiny one. I started with the smallest one. This is 370 square feet. All those same health and passive design components are all considered. A lot of outdoor space, specialized pergola, a lot of special considerations for solar. The walls open up here on both sides, so you can have like a continuous indoor, or it would be outdoor to indoor to outdoor, like living space running all the way through. And obviously you have your bathroom, your kitchen, you have your master bedroom. It's like a master bedroom loft, and then the office below, and then you have the kids' loft over on this side. So, you have like 2 lofts, an office, a kitchen, living room, some storage, kind of all built into 370 square feet, which some people's bedrooms are that big, So it's a really cool little, like, it's like the absolute essential. This actually, I designed this for my family to be like the minimum viable product for my family of 4, to where I could also run my business and work from home, doing that all in 370 square feet. And so I modified it a little bit for Axe, like reimagining some of those health components and whatnot. But yeah, I'll be working on like an 800 square foot version, and then probably a 1200 square foot like cabin option as well. Those will be coming sometime in the near future. But yeah, I mean, we can do one of my designs for the cabins. That's kind of the idea. But Axe also has other, they're working with Whisper Creek. And so they have designs as well that you could go with. And theirs are kind of already done. Mine are in development because it's, I don't know, I'm still in development.
Still working. Marcus Johnson asked, if we're 2 years away from building, what should we be doing now to be prepared with our ideas of our custom built before we land shop? I think that's a good question, because there's a lot of folks who are interested about, they're still a year or 2 out, from actually building, or they're waiting for their be locally to open up.
Got it. Yeah, yeah. So, can you help me understand that? Like, do you have land and you're just holding, like you're sitting on the land for 2 years, or is it that you don't have land yet, but you're planning on having it and starting that process in 2 years? No land yet. Okay. I think that the best thing for someone in your position to do is to start studying yourself and how you use your home. Like literally, the best thing you can do is get a journal, or you could do a shared notes app or shared notes thing. Like if you have like an iPhone or something, and like share it, or you could do a Google Doc and share it, like some sort of shared notes, or just like a physical journal that everyone has access to in the house, where you can just start writing things down. Like every time you stub your toe, you write that down. You're like, dang it, that corner, in the house that does this thing. Like in my dream home, it will not have that architectural detail because that is the bane of my existence. Or for me, I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I think we should, I've seen the Hobbit house come up a couple times, so I think we should answer that next. The other things that come to mind is like, what is my routine? Like to really understand, like, what is your routine? Start understanding that. If you don't have one yet, start developing it. There's a great book called Atomic Habits. It really helps you start to build out that routine really effectively. I love that book. I would highly recommend it. Do that to start helping you build out your routine. Once you have it, now you can start thinking about ways that the home could be optimizing that routine. So like for me, I wake up and I'll try to eat something quick, small, high protein, quick first thing in the morning. So I know that I have to like meal prep. That doesn't really change the architecture, right? But you know what does change the architecture? Oh, are we still in, or did we lose? Did I get blocked out, or was it just JD? Oh, okay, I see you again. There we go.
I've been told that was actually the frozen one. I didn't know that. So that's why I just kept quiet. So if anybody was looking at me and I just looked conked out.
Awesome. No worries. Thanks. Okay, great. I'll continue. So for me, for my routine, like one of the things that I've added to my list is, I would like the kitchen. Like my flow is from bedroom to bathroom to kitchen to outdoors. That's my personal flow. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, how do I layer those spaces so it's almost impossible for me, or I shouldn't say impossible, it's inevitable that I would move through those spaces in that sequence. Like I've even heard people like Gary Brecka, he talks about cold plunge, or like, I don't know, some of these people who do cold plunge, I can't remember who it was that I heard that did it, but anyways, one of them was like, no, I will legitimately like set the cold plunge like right outside my bedroom, like before the toilet, like I have to jump in, I have to like swim through the cold plunge to get to the toilet. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of thinking. It's like, what is the routine I want? What is the routine I want the architecture to reinforce? And then how can we start thinking about the way that my home is going to be laid out to where it makes it very convenient for me to stay true to the kind of life I want to live. And so for me, it would be wake up, use the restroom, and as soon as I walk out, I have easy access to get to, the kitchen, so I can grab my food. And then immediately after, there's like an outdoor component, or maybe I have an outdoor kitchen, right? To where like I don't have to wait till after I go to the kitchen to be outside. Maybe I have an outdoor bathroom. So like I can actually be outside, I can roll out of bed, go into my outdoor bathroom. And so I don't have to prolong like getting sunlight first thing in the morning. And I don't have to jump through the hoop of like, well, let me go to the bathroom, spend whatever many minutes there. Let me now go to the kitchen, spend however many minutes there. And now only after I've done that, maybe it's been a half an hour or maybe an hour, that I've been going through these hoops. And now I finally can get outside and get sunlight. To me, it's like, I want to get sunlight as soon as I roll out of bed, right? Like I want to, and so if I can have an outdoor bathroom, hey, now I'm rolling out, outdoor bathroom, east facing. So as I'm, using that restroom, like I'm getting sunlight, and then I go to the kitchen. I go to the summer kitchen, which would be the outdoor part of the kitchen. I cook and do my breakfast thing, there. I'm still getting sunlight, and then after that, I go do my cardio or my or whatever it is I'm going to do, my stretching, my meditation, whatever. Like, so then I want my outdoor, courtyard space, my morning patio, right? I always have a morning patio. In my house, I'd have a morning patio because that would be on the east side, and then we'd have an evening patio, which would be on the west side. And so I would have the morning patio, and that's where, and it's set up for me to either finish breakfast. If we're doing the outdoor kitchen, I'd probably just have my breakfast in the outdoor kitchen. But then when I go to the morning patio, it's set up for me to do exercise, right? Where I can, I have my lawn, I have my outdoor gym equipment that's, maybe in a covered portion to protect it from rust and things like that. But that's now the spot that I'm landing in, and I stay there for the next 30 minutes to an hour or whatever it might be. So I want you to start thinking, what is my routine? And even to the point where it's like if I'm in the kitchen and I'm cooking, do I reach to the right, for utensils, for cooking utensils? Do I reach to the left? Really start to analyze yourself in the space. If you're hosting, really think about that. If you're hosting, what's everything that's working for you in your house? What's not working for you in the house? This is homework that usually I give to my clients early on. I'm like, okay, this is your homework. You need to start thinking about these things and writing it down and then giving me the data, because once I have the data, I can then synthesize it into your house. But you can start collecting this data now for how you use a house, how you want your life to kind of start to unravel, in every day. And of course I can start bringing in all the passive stuff and the site stuff. But really that first piece is you. So understanding that is half of the picture.
That is huge. This is so cool. All right, how about a question?
Yeah. Okay. So what I see Hobbit House ? So I guess I'm trying to understand. Was there? I thought I saw other. Is the question just can we design a Hobbit house?
Yeah.
My answer, if that's the question, my answer is I would love for someone to ask me to design a Hobbit house. So if you're the person,
that was one of the cabin ideas.
Yeah, we should do it. We should do a Hobbit house.
Hobbit cabin.
My wife wants a Hobbit house. We are big Lord of the Rings and Hobbit fans. And yes, the answer is yes. You would have to do it right though. To do a Hobbit house, the structure of the building actually has to be an arch. And actually that's by design. The reason why it's an arch is because that's one of the strongest geometric shapes, like a dome shape. It's one of the strongest geometric shapes, and when you put a lot of earth on top of it, it tends to be pretty heavy, much heavier than shingles or a metal roof. So you end up having a lot more structure there. But if you shape it like an arch, then you can minimize that structure a lot more. You don't have to have huge, structural beams. Because you're able to transfer that load to the ground much more efficiently. So there's actually a structural reason why it looks like that. The other thing to consider with Hobbit homes is natural light, because just because it's underground doesn't mean it can't get natural light. And there's some really cool systems out there about for getting natural light in there that I would love to experiment with. One of those would be using light wells that they're like solar collectors that collect sun from all angles. It's like a little dome that is a mirror on the inside. It's like a reverse flashlight, and then it funnels that pure sunlight directly into a column of fiber optic cables or fiber optics, whatever. And then those then get split and then go throughout the house, and then on the other end where they're cut, they emit 100% pure sunlight. They do trim off a little bit of the UV rays, but there was a really cool study that was done, and this is another level to health things. TJ had asked me to design a greenhouse, and I have I'm so excited. I can't wait to start designing a greenhouse, because the way I would design the greenhouse, tying into the way I would then also light a Hobbit home, is I would use a system like that. There was a really cool study done by someone in a physicist in Japan where they were studying plant growth under specific conditions. There was two variables that they controlled for. The first was higher density of carbon dioxide in the room that they were growing this single tomato plant in, and then the other was the sunlight that they exposed it to. So they would expose it only to sunlight filtered through fiber optic cables. And the reason why they did that was because it removes like the top level of UV radiation, which is what is understood to be the harmful part of the radiation to plants. And it kind of, in a way, mimics, like if you believe in like young Earth creationism, it kind of, in theory, would mimic that environment. You know, higher density atmosphere, filter sunlight through like some sort of ice canopy. But either way, whether or not you believe in that, this is what the study showed with the fiber optic cables and the higher density carbon dioxide, is that the tomato plant, they put it in like a box, basically, like a little room with no sunlight except through the fiber optics and no air except with this higher density carbon dioxide atmosphere that they created. And they found that the tomato plant grew to like triple the size of a regular tomato plant. It started producing tomatoes that were like the size of baseballs, and it grew so big it started breaking out. Like it was like it filled up the room, right? Like and they're like, wow, this is amazing. It produced like 1,000 cherry tomatoes. So like imagine a cherry tomato the size of a baseball, right? And 1,000 of them. And then they're like, should we continue the study? Let's move the plant to a bigger warehouse. So they got like a bigger warehouse and did the study again. Like continued it, fiber optic cables, high density carbon dioxide, and they and it continued to grow. This thing grew into like a tree. They had to use scaffolding to hold up the branches because it was so big. It was like gonna like collapse under its own weight. It produced cherry tomatoes the size of like grapefruit or like softballs, and there was, I think it was like either 13 or 15,000 cherry tomatoes it produced for the single plant, right? So I mean, like literally Garden of Eden type growth. And they looked at this and like, what the heck? That study, that for some reason it was never reproduced. Like I don't know if it wasn't attempted to be reproduced or whatnot. So like, who knows what happened? If it was a fluke or if there's really something to that. But I've seen other things. You know, like I have a friend of mine who runs a regenerative farm, and I'm about to interview the guy who helped him set up a structured water system for his greenhouse. And so structured water, you should look into it. I won't get into it too much here unless that's the direction we want to go with this conversation. But structured water is very interesting. It's the fourth phase of water. So you have liquid, gas, solid, but then there's also structured water. And that's the kind of water that's inside the cellular membrane in your body. And so structured water, my friend here in Tennessee who did an experiment with structured water, he found that the greenhouse with structured water versus the greenhouse without structured water, that was the only difference. The one with structured water had 2 times more production than the one without, like twice as much, just by structuring the water. And so I'm actually, when we go over in a week or two here, I'll be in Washington State interviewing the lead scientist on structured water. And the whole point of this is to like study what he's doing and then figure out how in my designs I can create a plumbing system that automatically structures the water for you to come out of all the spouts and fixtures, and then even out of your hose bib. So like when you're watering your plants and stuff, like everything is structured. So it's a much more natural form of that water. And I have some ideas. I read his book and I'm like, okay. And I emailed him, we got it all set up. So we're gonna literally like going through this research and development process to like invent new ways and new systems for these healthy homes. So that way, you know, we can just keep pushing the boundaries of like what is possible. And so I think about the Hobbit house with the filtered sunlight, and I think about like the greenhouse. Like once I finish this interview, and I'm going to do an interview with people for the filtered sunlight through that stuff. I think that's the way that I would approach a greenhouse actually, or those two things combined. And to be honest, it might not be big enough of a greenhouse because the plants might just explode in size. I don't know. Well, we'll see. It might be a disaster because people will be calling me up like, Zach, your darn greenhouse is too small. And I was like, oh, dang it. But that would be a good thing, I think. So, you know, but this is like the direction I want to take architecture, you know. So yes, Hobbit house, I would love to do one. So if you if you want to do one, let me know. That'd be a fun project.
There you go. Glenn asked, do you have experience with using geothermal technology to cool and heat a home?
Yeah, so that is more in principle. I've done a few
Did I
designs where
freeze?
we lightly.
Froze.
Are you there? Am I there? Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Um, yeah. So I always make sure to surround myself by experts. There's no single person who knows everything. It really is all about a team, and so I make sure to have my blind spots covered by people that I work with as consultants to help fill in those gaps. Geothermal is a little bit of a gap for me. I understand it in theory and in principle, and I have implemented it at small scales. Like for example, utilizing it as a better location to place your your air condensing system. So like the outdoor fan cooling system that's sucking air, in, and then keeping that like air handler units and whatnot, keeping all those systems in cooler spaces rather than having them out in the sun helps to sort of precondition. Also, if I'm doing passive design, geothermal plays a role where I'll have underground chambers or rooms that are meant for cold air intakes, and then we'll pipe air through the rest of the house from those cooler either semi-underground or fully underground spaces, that we can pipe that air in through, so that way it's pre-chilled or pre-cooled geothermally, even though you might be trying to cool a room that's not underground. The cold air intake for that room would be coming from a geothermal, like geothermally cooled space that is either semi-underground or fully underground. And then of course there's other ways to utilize it, where you could literally build a hobbit home, and have that full geothermal, where every part of your house is underground, and you have grass on the top of your ground, so there's really like no solar. Heat gain transfer through the roof even. Green roofs are really great for that. I think thatched roofs are pretty good for that as well, for reducing thermal heat transfer. So the answer is just like, yeah, I'd love to work more in geothermal, but I can't say that I've done like a fully, until I do that hobbit house, then I will. I can say that I've done a fully geothermal home.
The
but
Hobbit house.
there's other. You what?
The Hobbit house seems to be rising in popularity here.
Yeah. Well, I would want to approach it to where it's not a novelty. I would want it to be something that people would walk in and they'd be like, whoa, this is kind of cool. And then they would sit for a moment and say like, wow, there's something transformative about this space. I don't want to leave it, because there's something to be said about like the novel architecture where you go in and it's like, this is kind of cool, but like, I'm not going to make a home here. So making sure that the space, if we were to do a hobbit home or do something underground, at least in part, if not in full, then definitely designing it in a way that it feels like it could be home forever. That's important, and it's not just about novelty of it, like being a hobbit home, because I think that would be a failure. Like if you got to the end of it, you're like, well, that's kind of cool, but like this house just doesn't work for me. That would be I don't think that would be bad.
All right. Erika asked about water systems, and she asks about, as long as it's approved by ACTS, water catchment, recycling, net zero energy efficient homes, solar power farming as roof additives, aquaponic systems connected to the water filtration water systems. You all are very educated people. This is interesting. What's your take on all that?
Yeah, so these are all elements that get built into a home to help make it more passive. So, instead of pumping water out of the ground, which is pretty energy intensive, you could collect rainwater and use that for irrigation to help mitigate how much water you need to pump out of the ground. So water catchment's a really smart idea. I think that even having like passive water catchment, where like your home is naturally designed to where when the roof, like basically you could do this technically with any roof. If you have your gutter system, then you're redirecting the gutters down to certain basins. But like with some homes, we can take it even a step farther, where like with Little G Villa that we were working on, that house, the roof slopes were specifically designed for solar panel optimization, like large areas where solar panels can be set at the right angle pitch based on the angle of the sun, so that way it's hitting it perfectly perpendicularly at the main part of the day. But then also having that rainfall, like considering how rainfall hits and then falls down, like having that automatically just fall as like a sheet of water, so that way you kind of get this cool feature. Because like I would hate to always rely on gutters and downspouts to redirect water. There's something nice about looking out a window on a rainy day and just seeing like this sheet of water just kind of flowing off your house. As long as you have like especially if you have a walkway, like the overhang is large enough to where it goes over a walkway and then falls and between you and the home. There's something special about that, or having a patio like that. But then having that go into a garden bed that then takes that water and then it's graded in a way that it starts to split that water into certain veins, because you're doing swales and whatnot, and then that just sort of feeds your gardens. So I mean that's another way to approach this. As far as net zero energy efficient homes, it's going to be really hard to get net zero to where like, and in my mind, when I think of net zero, it's like, yes, you can get there through solar production, like energy producing, but like true net zero is like your even without solar, like your house is just producing, like naturally just producing the energy, or capturing like natural energy forms to do the tasks, which is almost impossible unless you're willing to go without a lot of stuff. A lot of I don't mean a lot of stuff. I just mean like a lot of conveniences. But I think you really do need to put like your passive building hat on if you're going to consider powering your house 100% off solar, because you might, especially depending on where it is that you're located, because some places do not get enough sun to really use solar in a way, like an effective way with small amounts of panels. Like you're going to need a lot more panels. So you really want to be thinking about like reducing energy consumption in your building, so that way you don't have to build out a solar farm to power it. Now solar panels are getting better, but I also, it's important to think about backup systems. So like in my mind, it's like solar, then maybe having gas as a potential backup system, maybe, and then maybe like as a tertiary backup system, it's total off-grid, like no power, to where like now I'm just using physics, to like power the convective currents through my home, where I can, like Zach said, if I just open this vent and then open that one, that wind, breeze will just start getting sucked through the house naturally because of the way that it was designed. And so that's like the plan C, so I try to design houses to where you can always like get to plan C, to where like you won't die in your house. You might not be perfectly comfortable as like a modern day human being is, because we're so used to air conditioning, but you could definitely fall back on that. And then what that also does is allows you to extend the seasons where you don't have active systems running, because like let's say you're in March, and you're like, what, March in Tennessee is, where February in Tennessee is actually a beautiful time of the year. Like, this is great. March starts to maybe get a little warm. April kind of starts getting warm in April. But if your house is designed right, April maybe is now still a wonderful season for you, that you don't need to turn on your AC and you can just kind of have the building open and doing that, which adds like an extra couple months, to the number of months every year that you can just have your systems minimized, which also reduces. The thing to consider is HVAC system. Your air conditioning system is the highest energy consuming system in your home. So if you're not optimizing for your HVAC system, then there's really no other energy saving thing you can do that's going to outpace the savings in HVAC. So like really think about your heating and cooling loads that you're putting on the building. And if you don't start fundamentally with that from a passive mindset, then you're really just amending it. And AC is really an amendment, to a fundamental flaw in the house that's just now it's heating up unnecessarily, and so you have to cool it. So you don't want to like end up in that zone. And I would even say that solar panels is an amendment, right? Like so we want to minimize. I'm not saying you could fully remove solar panels, but I'm just saying like if we can get the base architecture right, then you can minimize the demand on these amendments, like AC and solar.
Man, I feel like we could talk for the next 4 days with what rolling around in that head. This is amazing. Is anybody give a oh yeah if you're getting enormous value from everything Zach is saying? This is so good, man. I'm so appreciative of your time. We're probably going to wrap it up here unless there's any other last questions. But if you want to, I guess, leave us on a high note of like, how do we get in touch with you? I was going to just simply, on the replay of this video, put your email address available. And if there's any other information you want to share with people as far as how do people utilize your services? What does that look like? Anything else you want to share on that front, man?
Yeah, sure. I will put in the I'll put in the description here a link to my calendar if you want to book an intro call with me, if you have a project, or if you are thinking through, even if you don't have a project yet and you're just like, I just want to think through this, like I'm happy to have an intro call with you to discuss that. I'm pasting my calendar there so you can schedule it there in the chat, and then I'm sure that we'll have it in the description on the replay. And then as far as like we kind of already talked about the ways that you can engage with me, but you don't even have to. If you forgot, it's fine. Just schedule an intro call. I'll help you figure out what is the right level of service. And sometimes people just need a friend. I'm happy to just be a friend sometimes if it's like you're not ready for architectural services yet, but I'm happy to just bounce ideas off, be the sounding board to bounce some ideas off of. And that's okay. I have a few people that are kind of in that phase where they're like not quite ready for architectural services, but we're just like just playing the role of friend and helping them think through some of the stuff. So yeah, if any of this interests you and you'd like to learn more, just schedule that call. If you're ready to like go and do a site walk, like a guided site walk, I have a different link, but I don't want to clutter the chat too much. So just use the intro call link, and then we can schedule the other one. But we can get that going for you, where we do that 3-call guided site walk and analysis for you, so you can really be confident about the site that you're picking out. One thing that Axe is really, Axe is always taking it to the next level. And one thing that they just mentioned, and JD, are we still good to mention that whole offer that Axe was wanting to throw out there? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've made it this far, then there's this really cool thing that Axe we're going to test out. We're going to try something new here. With most things, whenever you go out and you are looking to buy some land or buy a house or whatever it might be, you have your realtor, and then that realtor guides you through, and then you end up picking a house. With Axe, what we've realized is that you get more value having an architect guide you through that process, because you get to ask all the hard questions. They're looking for things that are more in line of like quality of the build, quality of alignment of the site with you. Like there's so many other things that just go on. There's like, okay, not this one, the red flag, this one, and so if you're interested in doing that, then we have this offer where if you'll book that guided site walk with me, I will be like your guide through that whole process of picking out the right site for Axe. I also do this for other properties, but like for this offer is specifically like only for Axe properties. There is a fee that covers my time to do this for you, but if you end up buying a lot at the end of that process, then I will refund you the fee, because Axe has offered to give me the commission or part of the commission for like a realtor would get, right? So they're reimagining like this whole realtor process. They're like, why would we just put commission into a pocket of a realtor when we can have an architect guide our clients through this process, really help them visualize everything, like understand the best lot for them, and then once they buy it, I'll refund the fee to do that. Because if you buy, then there'll be a sales commission, obviously. That would then go to me, but I don't really feel right just collecting commission. That's just not how I work. So I had told, so what we had figured out was that if you buy a lot, you get that fee refunded, and I will give you the entirety of the first design phase for free of the whole design process. So we're talking programming and analysis, all those documents that I showed you. We don't get to the part of the 3D walkthrough yet. That's the second design phase. But all the programming analysis documentation that we looked at, you'll get all of that for the site that you bought, which includes a site walk. All right, like I actually come out to site with you in person, and we'll walk the site, do all the analysis, get all the documentation, get the drawings together, get the bubble diagrams together, get the program, all that kind of stuff. You get all that included for free just because you sign it. And so that's basically where that sales commission is going. It's going so you don't have to pull out of pocket if you then want to hire an architect to go through that process with you. That's a $7,500 like offering. Like that's how much I charge people to go through programming and analysis. It's $7,500 typically. It depends on the project, but like for something like this, it's typically $7,500. So that you just get that for free, and you obviously got the guided walkthrough with me to help you pick your site for free as well if you end up buying it. But if you don't, then you don't get the refund. But like that's something that only Axe is doing. I've never seen anyone else propose to do that, and so I'm happy to be a part of it. I mean, like I want more people to have more information so that way they can end up getting a better product. It doesn't obligate you to go with me for a schematic design or any of the any of the following design phases for like a custom build. You can still pick something else, but that first phase, everything that we just showed here, would all just be included with your sale. But you'd have to go through the guided walk to be able to get that thing. But anyway, that's something TJ and Kara and Axe, the whole Axe team, they're always innovating. I think it's a really cool idea. It feels like there's really nothing to lose on that side of things. Yeah. So there's that. You can always reach out if you have more questions on that.
There you go. I appreciate your time, man. As I'm sure I could speak for everyone in saying that. So thank you. Thank you for everything you have invested into yourself over the years in the quiet classrooms and quiet study rooms. Little did you know that you'd be on a live stream one day, being able to impact people and beyond when you get to walk parcels. So thank you for doing what you've done, and we just appreciate you. So have a great night, everybody. We'll be back. I'm sure we'll have another live stream in the near future, and I'll be sure to post all of Zach's info so you can blow him up and hire this guy. He's an amazing guy, amazing talent. So we're grateful.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm constantly posting new videos on Instagram. So if you aren't already following, check those out, because I think you'll just pick stuff up as I post more and more info out there on this topic. So yeah.
Definitely follow this guy. All right, everybody. Have a great night.